Hello and welcome to Global Perspectives. I'm David Dumke here with co-host Katie Coronado. Today we are joined by Dr. Kayla Wheeler. Dr. Wheeler is an assistant professor at Grand Valley State University in Michigan. She is an expert on American Islam. She's also an expert on Islamic fashion. Welcome to our show, Dr. Wheeler.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So let me begin by asking, how did you get interested in Islamic fashion?
It was kind of by accident. I was living in London and doing field work at a mosque near my university, and every time I would come in, I would just have a long skirt on and a long sleeve shirt and just a scarf wrapped around my head. It was randomly really hot in London at the time, and I would have women come up to me, aunties, and say, "You're wearing your clothes wrong. This is not appropriate." And it was not something that I ever heard living in Cleveland, doing research, going to the mosque with family and friends. And so I wanted to learn more about why did people feel so comfortable telling me what I was doing wrong when I had spent years hearing that this was totally okay. And so that led me on so far a 7-year journey.
So speaking of your 7-year journey, we were talking a little bit about your research. Can you tell us about that and how that's had an impact on this phase?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on a book called Fashioning Black Islam, Race, Gender, and Belonging in the Ummah. And it is tracing the history of Black Muslim fashion in the United States going back to the 1930s with the Nation of Islam all the way to the present. So it's looking at how everything you're seeing in the media today with Halima Aden and Banana Republic and Macy's having fashion lines centered on Muslim women has a huge history that's rooted in the Black Muslim experience. So looking at the factories that were built by different Muslim organizations and the fashion shows. So it's been really cool to interview some of these innovators and also go check out the fashion shows and do some shopping on my own.
Oh, that's fun.
So,
Shopping.
well, hey,
Yeah.
there you go. So tell us a little about some of the trends in fashion. You're talking about the history since the 30s. How has it changed?
Yeah, so probably the biggest way it's changed is just more access to goods. So you see the introduction of silk, cheap silk that people can afford and wear. It's a bit breathable, specifically for Black Muslims, more access to African prints, so like kente cloth and wax prints, the cool, bright colors that you get, but also different wrapping styles for the scarves. So you could see turbans like Ilhan Omar wears, buns that allow your neck and ears to be exposed, and then just different folding techniques. So really showing the diversity, just not in the United States, but across the globe about what it means to be a Muslim woman and what it looks like.
And let's talk about the controversy behind and the perception of wearing this kind of fashion. Tell me how your research influences how you see that and why you've chosen this field.
Yeah, so for me, it's really important to highlight that there's more than just one Islam. When we talk about it, we say it's just this religion. It's one thing, and you can say who is Muslim and who is not. Through my research, I'm learning it's more about Islams. There's multiple interpretations, and that changes across time and space. So what Black Muslims were doing in the 1930s and 40s is really different than what Black Muslims are doing now, and that's okay. It's what everybody else is doing is changing, and I think oftentimes we forget that Islam is this growing, dynamic religion that takes on a lot of different ideas and people. So recognizing that and honoring that.
You talked about the access to different material. What other differences have you noticed from back then to what we see now?
I would say the use of color has changed a lot. So the Nation of Islam, they're more into block coloring. So you'll see someone wearing like for special occasions, all white. Now you're seeing like neon colors. So Carmen Muhammad is a famous fashion designer. She's been featured at the Torino Fashion Week a number of times and has actually won in a specific category for modesty. One of my favorite outfits of hers is like neon pink, and just cool ways that she's able to cut fabric. Another is a big trend that I find so interesting is the nude hijab. So having scarves that closely match people's skin color to give that cool kind of effect. And even some side hijabs that kind of look like hair. You wear them with a hat and you can't tell the difference. You have to do a double take. So people interacting with creativity and fabric in different ways. One really cool thing right now I'm seeing is cosplay. Muslim women going to comic conventions dressed up like their favorite superheroes or anime characters, and how they're able to do cool stuff with that. My favorite is the Princess Leia hijab bun. So
I've not seen that.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I quite recognize it if I did. Let me ask you, you know, first of all, Islam in America is not monolithic, a point you made, but it's also, you know, Islam is a global religion.
Yeah.
A lot of different parts. It's practiced in different ways, at least how it manifests on the outside. How does that shape fashion in, you know, American Islamic fashion? How does the global influence of Islam shape? You know, where do fashion trends come from, and where are they picked up?
So I would say Turkey and Indonesia are probably the biggest places. So Indonesia is actually the biggest Muslim country in the world. When we think about Islam, it's usually like it's an Arab religion. And yes, it did start in Saudi Arabia, but the top 3 biggest Muslim countries are not in the Middle East. So with Indonesia, you see a lot of like pastels and different kind of layering techniques, so really, really big scarves. And Turkey is one of the leaders in the textile industry. So you certainly see women inspired by Turkish scarf practices, wearing a lot of silk, having their hijabs like really bunched up in the back. And so that's that Turkish influence. And a lot of this is because of the internet. People being able to Google and look for different outfits. I know I've shopped at Turkish online stores before, and somehow or another it gets there the next day and it's beautiful and well made. YouTube and Instagram has really been popular for circulating images from across the globe and really making that gap seem a lot smaller for Muslims.
And speaking of gap, I know that you mentioned that a while ago you were inspired when people were asking you about the way you dressed. How do you think your work can make a difference in perception?
Well, for one thing, I think it can highlight how influential Black Muslims have been to the United States. So Islam first came here with enslaved Africans. And many of the first in the Muslim community have come from Black people, specifically Black women. So highlighting their stories, but also their influence. Black Muslims, specifically African Americans, they're one of the largest ethnic groups within the American Muslim community, but they're underrepresented in the media and even in the fashion industry. So we have Halima Aden, but that's just basically it for Black Muslim representation. But there's so many people who have made her rise possible and who are following in her footsteps.
You talked about the lack of representation in the media, for example. So what do little girls see, what do children see in general when they watch cartoons, or is there any representation that you can think of from a young age in that aspect?
For Black Muslim representation, not really that I can think of. I know there are a number of authors who are trying to change that, but on the media scene in terms of television and movies, I think as a whole we still struggle to give positive and diverse representations of what Muslim looks like and what Islam can look like. So often Muslims are portrayed as like terrorists, or if women are even portrayed, they're oppressed or wearing ugly, non-fashionable hijabs to begin with, so you don't get to see the nuances within Islam.
And how do you think that's going to change?
I think Muslim creators, youth, are going to make their own spaces. So one really cool movie that came out a few years ago is called Jinn. And it is about the story of a Black teenager who converts to Islam with her mom, and just her experiences of spending most of her life as a non-Muslim, and what does that mean to exist as someone who's a sexual being and wants romance and wants friendships, and what does that look like in this new world. And that was an indie film that was primarily funded by Kickstarter. So having a lot of this organic media hopefully getting able to pop into the mainstream.
You're talking about the mainstream, and of course, you know, one of the most prominent African American Muslims was Muhammad Ali, the
Yeah.
boxer who was, by the time he passed away, was beloved by all Americans. How important has it been for these role models to emerge? And these are individuals, but there's also a community that they represent, whether they wanted to or not. That's who we associate, how it's associated with the larger public. How important has that been for African American Muslims, and are you seeing more of these voices emerge in the mainstream, in the arts, in sports, in politics, in culture?
I think it's important to recognize how much Black Muslims have changed the conversation about Islam, but I think sometimes that's missing from this narrative is at what cost to them. So Muhammad Ali, when he died, was considered a national hero. That was, I believe, the first Muslim funeral that was ever live telecast. But he was stripped of his title for practicing his religion, and never really was able to get back to that glory. The same thing with Malcolm X. Now he's considered a national figure and was on the right side of history, but at the time he was vilified. And so I think the history books will give a better take on Black Muslims than what they're currently experiencing. So I'm thinking of Ilhan Omar, the first Black Muslim woman to make it to Congress, and she's been attacked by the media for a number of things. There's a imam in Australia a few days ago who said that she wasn't wearing a real hijab, that she was appropriating another religion.
She's getting criticized from both sides.
For various random things that have nothing to do with her actual politics. So I think it's good for children to see role models and see possibility models for them. But they also have to deal with the reality that Islamophobia is real. As more Black people, Black Muslims are visible, and Muslims in general are visible, there comes that risk, that danger.
Let me ask that, because a question then along those lines for Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, two very prominent Muslim women politicians who are in the public light, but there seems to be an extra burden that they have to explain and be defensive, and their words can easily be taken out of context, and they're asked about terrorism or about all these other subjects that really have nothing to do with them as individuals. But because there's a lack of understanding of Islam among the public, it's assumed that they have to answer for any Muslim act, quote unquote, in the world.
Yeah, I think there's an extra tax that Muslim women face, especially visibly Muslim women face. So Rashida and Ilhan, they're not the first Muslims in Congress. Keith Ellison was there, and Andre Carson is still there, but they don't face these kind of questions about their identity and their allegiances. I think part of it has to do with ethnicity. So Ilhan Omar is an American citizen, but she's Somali is her background. Rashida is an American citizen born here, but she's of Palestinian origin. And those two countries have a very, very difficult history with the United States. So that's something you often find women having to be the spokespersons for Islam and really push back against stereotypes that they're oppressed or voiceless. And when they do speak out, we expect them to be in this very, very narrow box and make us feel comfortable with what they're saying and believing. And they're showing us that Muslim women are diverse in their opinions and perspectives, and they could be loud and powerful too.
And speaking of that diversity and those opinions and expression, going to your research on fashion and the book that you're writing, how do you think that will influence, and what influence do you find in that research? You told me earlier that you're looking into YouTube videos and comparing a lot. How does that expression relate to those politicians and women expressing themselves now?
Yeah, so I think it shows that there's no one way to look Muslim. If you look at the media, there's an idea, there's a formula of what a Muslim looks like. She's a brown woman, she's a thin woman, and she wears her scarf in a certain style. So what my book is showing, there's a lot of diversity, and there's no universal truth about what Islam looks like. But we have to take into account this is a global religion, so nobody is learning about Islam or practicing Islam or performing Islam in isolation from each other. And that's something that has been so important to the American history of Islam. So Black Muslims interacting with non-Black Muslims, getting debates about theology, but also coming together on common ground around Islamophobia and racism. So highlighting those nuances.
Do you touch on that in your book?
Yeah. Especially the influence in Detroit and Chicago and New York City with the different immigrant communities that were coming in, not just from the Middle East, but the African continent. So what does it mean to talk about Black Islam when it includes more than African Americans? It's Somalis and West Africans and different East African countries. And how do they come together to have this unique feel to their religion that is expressed through dress?
And can you talk about some key differences and similarities in the groups that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so
Particularly the African American Muslim history, as opposed to, we're talking about, when you talk about Muslim, you think about, from the Middle East, from the Arab world. So what are some of the differences in the uniqueness in the history?
So the history, I would say, the relationship to the United States. So the first Muslims in the United States came here as enslaved people. So Islam in the U.S. has always been linked to oppression. When we think about the first Muslim bans in the Americas, it was actually a ban on importing enslaved Africans. Because many of the Africans that were taken from the continent were soldiers, and so they would revolt. And so that's very different from later generations of Muslims coming to the United States, many of them being from working class, but also upper class, being professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, coming from South Asia, and coming from the Middle East, and seeing how they interact with Black communities. So where I live in Michigan, there's a very long history of interactions between Syrian and Lebanese and Palestinian Muslims with Black people, because they were still not white. So
Right.
there's that shared oppression. And that comes out with how they organize communities. So one organization that's really close to my heart is Muslim ARC, the Muslim Anti-Racist Coalition, is looking at community dialogue, how non-Black Muslims can contribute to the oppression of Black Muslims, and how that needs to be hashed out before we address other issues like Islamophobia. But it comes up with fashion too. Who gets to be the spokesperson for Islamic fashion,
Right.
which fashions are pushed to the mainstream, and oftentimes it's non-Black fashions. And I think that has to do because we associate Islam with the Middle East. And you're seeing a change in that, Ilhan Omar being on the front stage, Halima Aden, but there's also older examples. So like Iman, the famous model, she's Muslim. And she's been very out and proud about that, but we don't usually consider her part of the conversation because she doesn't wear a hijab.
Well, you mentioned that you brought the hijab
Yeah.
up, so I'm going to ask the follow-up question, because a lot of Americans don't understand what the hijab means. Does a Muslim woman need to wear a hijab? Why don't you explain a little to the audience about what the hijab means and what part it plays in Islamic fashion?
Yeah, so the hijab is just a catch-all term to describe modest dress practices for Muslim women. You'd have to ask an individual Muslim woman what she thinks the hijab is, whether it's required, what meaning it has for her. We talk about it so much in the media and even in academia, but little is written on it in the Quran. There's only really 2 passages in the Quran that talk about the hijab. But you would not know that with how much attention we give it. So for some women, they do believe it's a part of their religious practice. For other women, it's just a way to show that they're Muslim. You're walking down the street and you want someone to recognize you for your religion and see you as a part of community. Especially in a post-9/11 context, it's been a way to resist Islamophobic views of the religion, but also to kind of resist American imperialism. So there's so many different meanings and understandings of what the hijab is for, but also what it can look like.
On that note, when you're in your study of Islamic fashion, has the goal been to blend in or to stand out?
I would say for Black women, it's to stand out. It is to show that Black Muslims exist, that they are Muslim, and they don't have to prove that to anyone but themselves. So you will see bright colors, big turbans, beautiful layering techniques. So it's to show what Islam has done for them, the community it's brought them, the sense of love for self and love of blackness. So it's to stand up and stand out in the community.
I have a question. It may sound a little crazy, but if I want to dress like that, different, I read your book and I'm like, you know what? I think I would like to dress like that. And I attend a Muslim event. How am I perceived, do you think?
So,
Oh, I'm Hispanic. Okay.
Yeah. So if you were to attend a mosque and you just wanted to hang out, you're not actually required to wear it unless you're in the prayer room. I would say in general, if people want to show solidarity for Muslims, it's best to ask them how they want solidarity. I think we see a lot nowadays, especially after an Islamophobic event, people want to wear a hijab in solidarity for Muslims. And that comes with a lot of privilege to decide when you'll show up for Muslims. And what people don't always take into account is how doing hijab solidarity kind of puts Islam in a box and says that the hijab is Islam. It's one part of Islam, but there are many Muslim women who do not wear the hijab. And if non-Muslims take an active role of defining what Islam should look like and what Muslims should look like, they end up isolating a lot of women. So I would say if you're interested in joining communities, showing solidarity, reach out to your local mosque or the CARE organization and see what they need. It might be for you to donate your time or your resources instead of dressing up.
So it shouldn't, so to clarify, it's not just a fashion statement.
For some people, it is a fashion statement, but we have to understand that it is rooted in religious beliefs and that there is a lot at risk from wearing those fashion statements. So believe it or not, there have been more incidents of Islamophobic violence now since about 2016 to now than it was right after 9/11. And most of those victims have been Muslim women who are visibly Muslim, so wearing the hijab, wearing abayas that just leave your, it's all black and you just have your face showing. So we have to keep in mind, yes, for some people this is beautiful clothing, but it's beautiful clothing that has deep religious, political, and cultural meaning, and we miss out on that if we just put it on for a day.
Excellent.
Let me ask, because you mentioned Islamophobia and some of the attacks that have taken place on the Muslim community, but we've also seen attacks on other faith communities as well, and American Muslims have taken a lead on working with some of these, for example, after the Pittsburgh Mosque, on raising money. What's special? I guess it's is it a burden or is it a leadership? How do American? I'm trying to phrase this correctly, but it seems to be an extra responsibility, if you will, for the American Muslim community to be in the forefront when these incidents of intolerance take place. Why is that, and is that something that the community embraces, their role?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people were surprised to see that some of the first communities to come out after the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting were Muslims. But so many Muslims recognize that oppression is interconnected. So if you want to get rid of Islamophobia, you also have to address anti-Semitism and how those two things are connected. So building communities with other marginalized groups is really important to Muslims. So a few years ago, there were a series of fires to black churches. And the lead fundraiser for that was a black Muslim woman who could see that, no, they're not the same religion, but they have common stories of oppression and marginalization in the United States. So that does put a burden on Muslims. It's like whenever there's a disaster, you go to a Muslim, they either have to say they denounce terrorism, it has nothing to do with their religion, or right away they have to fundraise for someone who might be hurting their mosque or another religious institution. It is a burden, but for me, I see Islam is rooted in social justice. Islam was founded to give voice to the oppressed and stand up against intolerance. So to me, this is just part of the history and part of the religion to do that. It's an unfortunate burden, but I think that's really important to Muslims is the social justice aspect.
So you've talked about then this leadership role, if you will. I'm talking. have American people become more tolerant despite some of the outward signs of intolerance we've seen in the last few years? Are people understanding Islam more?
Yes or no. So I think we're recognizing that it's a religion that is not going anywhere. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the United States, but we're not necessarily making room for Islam and all of its diversity. So we still have a lot of work to do. I think what's happening in the fashion industry is one big step. I go to H&M and now I see maxi skirts everywhere. And that's good for everybody, especially in Michigan winters, to have something warm to put on. So we have other industries that we need to address, and hopefully that will happen soon.
Great. And a quick recap on what to expect with your book.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be published sometime late next year. It's going to be looking at the history of Black Muslim fashion, but also some things that are happening today online and in the fashion world in general.
Thank you so much for your time.
We want to thank you for joining us today, Dr. Wheeler, and we want to thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Global Perspectives.